In a realm where the fabric of reality was delicately woven from the dual threads of temporality and eternity, the teachings of a sage known as Luminar Eternius, an ambassador from the king of the timeless realm, emerged as a beacon of wisdom in an era shrouded in turmoil. His voice, both ancient and timeless, spoke to the hearts of those lost in the shadows, illuminating the path that lay obscured by the mists of deception and division. In the intricate tapestry of existence, where truth and falsehood eternally intertwine, the saga of Temporania's descent into the abyss of deceit unfolds a narrative meticulously chronicled by the sage Luminar Eternius, also known as the beacon of the timeless realm. His revelations, profound and unsettling, pierce the veils of illusion that have long ensnared humanity in a cycle of perpetual darkness. In the shadows of a world teetering on the brink of existential oblivion, Luminar Eternius, the venerable sage of the timeless realm, embarked upon his first discourse titled As the Winds Begin to Blow, a profound meditation on the tempests of change that now swept across the lands and hearts of Temporania and beyond. Luminar Eternius stood before the assembly, his voice resonating with the force of a coming storm. Nations, at their core, are but a reflection of the collective souls of their people, he began. And yet behold how the secular liberal democracies of your era stand at the precipice, denying their own bedrock while claiming a false mantle of equality. He posed a question that hung in the air like a sword of Damocles. How can a society uphold equality of beliefs when it undermines the very principles that allow it to flourish? Luminar's gaze swept across the gathered, a silent challenge to the chaos that bred entropy, confusion and destruction. All things, he continued, are not equal. Just as the mountain cannot concede to the valley, so too must we recognize that not all ideologies can coexist without a foundational truth to anchor them. With each word, Luminar Eternius peeled away the layers of deception that had ensnared the modern state, revealing the folly of a society that sought to sever itself from the roots of objective truth and divine providence. In its arrogance, he declared, the liberal order forsakes its heritage, courting entropy and dissolution. He spoke of a middle ground, neither wholly secular nor religious, but grounded in the immutable bedrock of objective truth, untainted by the relativism and subjectivism that plagued contemporary thought. True wisdom, Luminar affirmed, lies not in the rejection of our foundations, but in the humble acknowledgement of a reality governed by universal truths. Addressing the spectre of subjectivism that haunted both the corridors of power and the halls of academia, Luminar Eternius lamented the erosion of scientific integrity and logical coherence. Subjectivism, he intoned, is a malady that afflicts all humanity, blinding us to the luminous path of truth that transcends personal and cultural biases. He called for a renaissance of objective inquiry, a return to the disciplined pursuit of knowledge that neither denies the evidence of the senses nor the revelations of the divine. In the confluence of science and spirituality, he proclaimed, lies the salvation of your world. Luminar Eternius, standing amidst the ruins of what was once a bastion of prosperity and enlightenment, began his next discourse by unraveling the facade of the temporal world. Behold Temporania, he declared, a kingdom that reveled in the grandeur of its illusions. Wealth, power, influence, all but fleeting shadows under the eternal gaze of the cosmos. The leaders of Temporania, cloaked in the semblance of divinity, governed from their gilded cages, their might shielded behind battalions and fortresses, revealing the paradox of their existence. They were but prisoners of their own dominion, ensnared by the very power they wielded, their lives a testament to the ultimate futility of their pursuits. The prison of wealth and the mirage of control, Luminar expounded, are but chains that bind the soul to the wheel of samsara, the endless cycle of birth and rebirth in the domain of shadows. For what is power but a chalice of poison that kings and tyrants drink, believing themselves immortal, yet trembling at the whisper of their mortality? As the sage delved deeper into the heart of Temporania's malaise, he unveiled the insidious nature of the lies that had woven the fabric of its society. A society built on the shifting sands of deceit, where the elite, drunk on their delusions of grandeur, crafted elaborate edifices of governance and security, not as sanctuaries of order, but as bulwarks against the very people they purported to serve. The more they amassed, Luminar continued, the greater their fear of loss became, spiraling into an abyss of paranoia and desolation. Thus the architects of Temporania's splendor became the harbingers of its doom, their legacy a cautionary tale of the hollow pursuits that lead kingdoms to ruin. The downfall of Temporania was not wrought by external forces, but from within, a corrosion of the soul that spread like a plague, infecting every street and alley with the pestilence of despair. The elite, in their quest for more, had siphoned the lifeblood of their realm, leaving behind a husk, a shadow realm bereft of light and hope. Yet in the midst of this desolation, Luminar Eternius spoke of redemption, of a path illuminated by the eternal truths that lie beyond the realm of shadows. The kingdom of lies shall crumble, he prophesied, not under the might of armies, but through the awakening of hearts to the luminous path of veracity and love. He called upon the denizens of Temporania, and indeed all of humanity, to transcend the illusions of the temporal, to see beyond the ephemeral, and to embrace the eternal essence that binds the cosmos. For in the light of truth, he affirmed, lies the key to liberation from the cycle of shadows, a rebirth into a realm where love, justice, and harmony reign supreme. Thus, the sage wove a new narrative for Temporania, one of hope and renewal, where the chains of deceit were shattered by the indomitable spirit of those who dared to dream of a world governed not by the tyranny of lies, but by the sovereign grace of truth. Luminar Eternius commenced his discourse by delineating the stark contrast between the temporal and the eternal realms. He elucidated that the temporal domain, characterized by its ephemeral nature, was not merely an illusion, but a stage for the grand play of existence, pointing towards a more profound reality. He asserted, this world, akin to the cover of an intricate narrative, unfolds stories within its bounds that gesture towards the eternal saga awaiting beyond. In the final gathering of the Council of Temporania, Luminar Eternius stood before the assembly, his presence casting a light that seemed to pierce through the veils of illusion that had for too long enshrouded the realms. The sage, whose wisdom had guided the kingdoms through epochs of light and darkness, now addressed the pervasive shadows that threatened to engulf their world in eternal night. Esteemed members of the council, began Luminar Eternius, his voice resonating with a truth that shook the very foundations of Temporania. We find ourselves at the precipice of a great chasm, one carved by the relentless pursuit of mirages, wealth, power, influence, fame, and control. These are but chains that bind the spirit, illusions that distance us from the essence of our true existence. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle among the gathered, who listened with rapt attention, sensing the gravity of the moment. In our world, leaders and elites erect fortresses of solitude, guarded by legions, yet within they are prisoners of their own making. They live in fear of those they govern, encapsulated within walls that are as much to keep others out as to trap themselves within. Tell me, what freedom lies in a gilded cage? What sovereignty exists in perpetual fear? Luminar Eternius paced slowly, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the councillors, each reflecting upon the truth of his words. These architects of dominion craft systems not for the welfare of the many, but for the preservation of the few. This is the paradox of power. The more one possesses, the more one fears its loss, and thus the more one seeks to control. But this control is a spectre, breeding only resentment and revolt, feeding the cycle of fear and tightening the noose of their own making. The sage stopped, standing firm as he continued. Consider the plight of our world, mirrored in the endless expanse of history, a cycle of rise and fall, of empires built on the sands of deception, only to be eroded by the tides of truth and justice. This is the nature of the lie that seduces humanity, promising dominion but delivering only bondage. Luminar Eternius raised his hands as if to embrace the entirety of creation. The addiction to more, This insatiable void that consumes hearts and minds is the engine of our world's demise. It is a shadow play where the substance of life is sacrificed at the altar of ephemera, where the soul's eternal thirst is sought to be quenched by the temporal and fleeting. His voice, now a soft but firm whisper, carried a power that seemed to echo across realms. But it is within our grasp to sever these chains, to step out from the shadow into the light. For the kingdom of lies to be obliterated, we must awaken to the truth that we are not mere inhabitants of a physical realm, but eternal beings journeying through a momentary passage. Luminar Eternius' eyes shone with a celestial light as he concluded, "Let us then, as custodians of Temporania, pledge to seek not the dominion of shadows, but the sovereignty of the Spirit. Let us build not empires of illusion, but sanctuaries of truth in love, justice with mercy and humility, in the enlightenment of the divine Logos. For in the end it is not the wealth of nations that shall define our legacy, but the richness of our souls." With that, the sage bowed, his final discourse a beacon that would guide the Council of Temporania through the darkness towards a dawn of truth and liberation.